summer going into my senior year of college, I went to Mexico City during the summer. It was super hot, and they have these paletas on the street that are just like locally grown fruit, just blended and on a stick, and it's delicious. It was like the greatest thing ever. And I was having like 2 or 3 a day while I was there, and it was incredible. And got back to the States, and there just wasn't anything like it. There wasn't anything frozen that was fresh, that was made with locally grown real ingredients. It was all just kind of like whatever you could find. Just if there were fruit bars, it wouldn't even register as a fruit bar like after that. And during that time I was in school and really fascinated and loved social enterprise that was sort of coming up at that time. So like entrepreneurs and companies and brands thinking about social enterprise in a different way. Like Tom's, like 1 for 1. And that model where you can use your product as a way to have an immediate impact and do something good was just incredible. And like it seemed really rewarding and exciting. And then also a pop is something that makes people happy. So kind of those 3 things combined. And for some reason I started working on this in class, writing a business plan.
Like while you were supposed to be doing other things, or
I was sitting in class. No, yeah, I was supposed to be doing something. I was supposed to be graduating. I should have been done a long time before, probably a year before. I had 6 classes left, and in one of those 6 hours left, and in one of those classes, I was just sitting there designing a fictitious popsicle brand logo, just for fun. And then one thing led to another, and a couple months later, I really loved the idea, and decided to just. I knew that I wasn't going into advertising.
What were you studying at school? Was it a marketing, advertising?
I was in this advertising program, and so at University of Texas, and it was a really rigorous program. It was almost like rigorous to just make it rigorous, to just weed people out. And I'm sure like programs like that where but a lot of times they're for a good reason, like people that are going to become doctors. Mm-hmm. This was for people to learn how to sell stuff, like advertising. And I knew that I wasn't going into the industry, that I wasn't going to be rewarded by just doing that, or feel rewarded by doing that. But I was falling in love with this notion of what makes people fall in love with brands and how that's evolving at that time. And it still is. I mean, what made people fall in love with brands and products is totally different in 2009 from how it is today.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. So what did it look like then? So you're sitting at class, you're designing this logo, you graduate, presumably, or you don't graduate. Even better. So you leave to go start GoodPop's. I'm making this up.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's right.
Kind of. Yeah. So I had jobs from when I was, probably 14 on, but I also had like my little company. So like when I was a kid, I had like the Lawn Rangers, and it was me and my friends, and we were pushing our lawnmowers around the neighborhood and mowing people's yards for like $15 or whatever they wanted. We would just go to the yards that had the tall grass.
Totally.
And then, so we did all sorts of things. And with that, I ended up saving like $8,000 and I did one thing, and I went to Europe with a good friend of mine, but came back with a little bit left over, and I used that. So essentially life savings, and put it into trying to figure out GoodPop. And so we started making them, basically designing very simple recipes, like paleta inspired recipes, designing the packaging at night in Photoshop, because that's what I was in school for, and came up with some recipes that made that were delicious, that made sense. And like, okay, and then put some stickers on the bag, and it's like, oh, now I have a brand, a pop company. Um, and the big idea was that we were going to go out and sell. We were going to drain the rest of the savings and make 18,000 pops and go sell them at a music festival in Austin. And we made 18,000 pops. It took 3 weeks, and we go out to that music festival at ACL, and it rained all weekend. It poured, and we sold 4 pops, and it was like, I thought that was what was going to kickstart this business.
Yeah.
And so after that, I went back to school, kind of dejected, and went back and started working towards finishing. But that was kind of, I think that massive failure at the beginning was, and you and I have been doing this for so long, where every day has something like this happen now.
Totally. Every
right?
day. You just have to, I feel like we're wiser now, whereas before, at least for me, you ride every high so high and every low so low, and it is really hard to regulate yourself, like, throughout the years. Really, I would say throughout the week, but it's really throughout the years until.
At what point did you start to like that process, or do you like that process now of like solving those big problems, putting the pieces together, finding ways out, finding solutions? Like, do you like that now, or are you still like, this is?
So you know what? I think this is and I want to go into this, so we might as well go into it now. I think it's a difference of founders and entrepreneurs who start a business by bootstrapping all the way through with no capital, right? And get to profitability pretty quickly, versus the ones who put their savings in, clearly, like you and I, right? I mean, we together, my husband and I had $25,000 of savings that we had been saving up for, since we were like 12, same thing. And dumping it in, and then realizing really fast that we were selling a product for less money than we were making it. Right. So then, then you need investors, and you're like, shit, like, what did we get ourselves into? Right. So there's that. I think outside of that, if we were maintaining and we were bootstrapping and we didn't have, all of these shareholders and all of these investors who had just put so much money into the business, like, I think it'd be really different. But to kind of tie that into a bow really fast is, I actually thrived, and my husband used to say this all the time, like, when shit hit the fan, I would be like, okay, this is like, we got this. Like, I'm excited to solve something. I'm excited to learn. I'm excited to try and, like, convince these partners to do X, Y, and Z. But after like 12 years of trying to learn, when you're not profitable, it can be a real huge issue, right? Because you run out of cash much faster. You have to fundraise all the time. That's the piece that I really didn't like, but I actually loved the solving and the creating and the learning. So I'm curious because you did not have that story. I mean, we had like stories, but you had a different model of what running your business looked like than I did.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the reason I asked about that moment, because it's just that's what got me really, that moment where we just like had to find a way. Mm-hmm. And then it was just, so that's where that started. And I hated it. I was 22, 23, but at the same time, it was so hard. And so the challenges were so, they felt like they're so insurmountable every day. Like, just like, okay, so I've solved this, but then there's still all of these other things. Okay, well, I'll get to that later because I have to get this most urgent thing solved.
You solve something and you feel like you've just made it, and then you get a call or an email and you're like, fuck. It's like never ending. Yeah.
It's never ending. But I think one thing that I realize is, like, yes, you have to be ready to solve problems and not get frazzled by the act of doing it. I mean, you have to be ready at any time and not get emotional about your problem solving, but find a way, and
Totally.
because that's regardless of if you've raised $0 or, $100 million, you're gonna have problems all the time, and it's
All
gonna
the
take a
time.
clear. Yeah, you have to it takes a clear level head to get out of it, like you were saying. Like, all right, here's what we're gonna do,
Yeah.
and then you go out and you do it.